Madam President and Senators, good morning. Tell the road you trot, lead unto your God. This line in our national anthem puts living and life in perspective. Each person is on a journey that will one day culminate with a meeting with their Maker. Romans 14 and 12 states, so that each of us will give an account of himself or herself to God. As our nation enters her fifth decade, this line in the national anthem can serve to challenge us to live wisely. Each one should seek to live a full life so that at its conclusion there would be no regrets and no one can say you have lived a wasted life. Each of us should examine the road of life that we are on and ponder, what impact am I having and what legacy will I leave behind? One of my favorite poems is by Edward Everett Hale, and it goes like this: I'm only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Senators, are you pleased with the trajectory or path of your life? How can you grow in your leadership and influence to have a greater impact in this season of your leadership? What goals and strategies are you employing so that you can develop more fully into your God-given potential? Proverbs 3 and 13 states, blessed is the one who finds wisdom and the one who gets understanding. I want to encourage you to be wise about who has access to speak into your life, whether in person or through books or technology. Guard yourself and your potential. You have been selected and appointed to be a difference maker. Do not allow negative persons to discourage or zap your energy. Do not allow persons deplete of wisdom to give you foolish counsel. And do not allow arrogance to set you up for defeat. At the end of your life and service, you will be either celebrated or condemned for the service you are giving. Remember, a companion of fools is foolish, and iron sharpens iron. Develop a good relationship with wise counselors who will help you to excel. Cultivate faith in God. He has designed each of us and knows our potential and the wonderful gifts and talents that He has embedded in you. Never begin a day without gratitude to Him and seek to be grateful for all your blessings. Never be too resolute that you cannot shift if you are on the wrong road and you need to switch direction. Napoleon Hill states this, and I conclude. If you cannot do great things, do small things in great ways. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the journey of all our senators. Help them to be surrendered to you. Fill them with wisdom. Help them to work as a cohesive unit. May they be consistent in their leadership and seek to emulate your example. In the precious name of Jesus, we pray. Please join in the prayer of our Lord. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good morning, Senators. Good morning, Madam Chaplain. The morning session of the Senate. Today is Wednesday, the 28th day of June, 2023. Adoption of minutes.
Madam President, good morning. Madam President, I move that the minutes of the session of the Senate held on Tuesday afternoon, 27th June 2023, be adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of June, 2023 afternoon session be adopted. As many are as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The minutes of the 27th of June, 2023 are hereby adopted. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, swearing in of new senators, communications by the President. As always, the Chair thanks Reverend Carla Culmer for her spirited devotion and prayer over these proceedings. As always, Madam Chaplain, you are timely and inspirational. May God continue to bless you. Today, we embark upon the all-important 2023-2024 budget debate for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. This budget must be passed as a matter of urgency. As you're well aware, the people that we serve are waiting on this budget for their salaries, which in turn, quite frankly, pay their bills. This includes our hardworking civil servants, our caring nurses, committed teachers, dedicated members of the armed forces, and the list goes on. And yes, even Grammy on Fowler Street is waiting on her pension money. Therefore, the Chair requests that you resist the urge to prolong the debate. We are here to do the people's business, and that we shall do. To ensure that optimal progress is made during this budget debate, the Senate rules will be strictly enforced. Whilst everyone will be given an opportunity and the right to speak, the Chair will not tolerate irrelevant contributions nor frivolous points of order. The people's work must get done, and I'm sure that you agree with me that the people's work must get done with purpose, pride, integrity, honor, and distinction. As always, it is the Chair's intention to remain fair and abide by the rule of law and to be impartial. As we commence today's proceedings, the Chair wishes to underscore the following rules. Before speaking, a senator must be recognized by the Chair. Any senator who rises on a point of order must firstly state the infringement of the rules which his point of order is based, and then resume his or her seat. When a point of order has been raised, the senator who is speaking shall resume his or her seat after the point of order has been stated, and the President shall rule. A senator shall not dissent from the ruling of the President except by substantive motion. For smooth running of this budget debate, I trust that each of you will adhere strictly to the Senate rules. On the 25th of June, 2023, the Chair participated in the church dedication of the Blessed Hope Seventh-day Adventist Church in Drakesville, South Andrews, the hometown of my mother and great-grandparents, Reverend Charles and Francida Forbes. It was a beautiful and spirit-filled service, and I once again extend sincere congratulations to Pastor Kareem Black, Elders Amos Flowers, and other elders, members, and officers of the Blessed Hope Church. May God continue to bless your efforts as you spread the good news and lead souls to Christ. The Chair extends sincere condolences to the family of Elizabeth Moses, my church sister, who transitioned at the age of 104. She was a most kind, tender-hearted, polite, beautiful, gracious, and passionate follower of Christ. It was actually her family, the Antonios, that is credited for bringing the Seventh-day Adventist religion to the Bahamas. Sister Moses will be dearly missed by her family, friends, and members of the Johnson Park Church and the Atlantic Union. We thank God for our wisdom, warmth, sincerity, and longevity. On the 26th of May, 2023, a notable and exceptional Bahamian by the name of George Smith transitioned from time to eternity. As a national treasure, he wore many hats, including 29 years of service to the people of Exuma, chairman of the 1973 Independence Day celebrations, cabinet minister, Bahamas non-resident High Commissioner to Singapore, signatory to the Bahamas Constitution, and advisor. The chair extends sincere condolences to his children Gina, Dr. Gigi, and Andrew. May his rich legacy and the love for his family, country, and community comfort you in your dark days. We are all grateful for the life and legacy of George Smith, who left us with a better Bahamas. May God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I hereby table the President's communication. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the House of Assembly. Laying of documents. Communications by ministers. Communications by senators. Questions. Answers to questions. Presentation of petitions. Appointment of select committees. Reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis.
Thank you very much, and good morning once again, Madam President. And I thank you, Madam President. Before I commence my debate, I would just like to share with senators, and good morning to all senators, that I had the tremendous honor and privilege to address on June 14th, but just over 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago today, to address the graduating class of St. Augustine's College, 2023 graduating class of St. Augustine's College. I think it was 106 of the brightest that our country has to offer, and I was tremendously honored to share with them on this the occasion of our 50th anniversary. And I would like to take this opportunity, Madam President, to congratulate all of our graduates who are graduating in this very significant year, when nationally we speak about a recommitment to the core values upon which our nation was founded. And it gives us the time of graduation and the ending of one phase of formation and the entering into a new phase. It's a tremendous opportunity, particularly for those young people who are so full of promise and optimism and enthusiasm, to recommit themselves, all who are graduating, particularly from high school, and those, of course, as well from university. And I just want to wish all of our graduates well, whatever they decide to do, whether it's continuing education or entering into the workforce. Madam President, I rise to move for second reading and committal of a bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st July 2023 and ending 30th of June 2024. This is the bill that I will move, Madam President, and at the appropriate time I will move for second reading of all of the other bills that we laid for a first time, that we introduced and had laid for a first time yesterday. This budget process, Madam President, is the means by which the government allocates resources to meet the needs of the population. In addition, it is the mechanism through which the government delivers on the promises and commitments that it made during its election campaign. And so, for example, the election commitments are made in various manifestos, and in our case, in our blueprint for change, we made commitments to the Bahamian people. Those were then transmitted once again through the speech from the throne. And this budget process is the process by which we allocate resources to fulfill those commitments. And the beauty of our system, Madam President, is that all of this is done in the full glare of the public, where the cabinet, as the government, reports on its budget to the Parliament and seeks approval from the Parliament, and the Parliament, by its debate and the procedures that it goes through, reports to the public. And so it is a means by which the government is held accountable. The related point I want to make at the outset, Madam President, is that this whole budget process relates to the allocation of scarce resources amongst various commitments. Scarce meaning that our resources are not unlimited. And so any government, any administration must prioritize the way that it allocates its resources. And those resources are determined by a few things. For example, the total value of all the goods and services produced in the country. So our GDP determines the level of resources that we have. The amount of revenue that the government is able to extract from the economy. Put simply, the tax burden that the government is prepared to impose. That determines how much revenue that the government collects and the resources that are available to meet its priorities. And thirdly, Madam President, the amount of borrowing, the amount of debt that the government is willing to undertake. And you take stock of the existing level of the national debt and what is it that you are prepared to add to it. And all of those go into your calculation as to the resources that will be available to you. And within this framework, resources are allocated to the various needs, Madam President. And I begin that way because I know throughout debates, the question will ask, and every ministry, every department could always use more resources. But it is the job of the government in its considered opinion how these resources are to be allocated for, and it is the job of the government to make sure that the limited resources that we do have are allocated effectively, are managed prudently so that we can have the maximum beneficial effect for the country. Madam President, in my opinion, this is one of the most important budgets in the 50-year history of us as an independent nation. Over the years, our priorities across various administrations, our budget priorities have always been education, health, security. And that commitment has been demonstrated by, over the years, the amount of the budget that is allocated to those sectors. In recent years, beginning as far back as 2008, following the global financial crisis, we have seen debt and debt servicing assume an ever increasing amount of our budget, a larger and larger share. And when I say we have those commitments and those commitments to education, to healthcare, to security, that those have by and large been consistently what the priorities of successive administrations have been, I would venture to say, Madam President, that the way forward is to continue a consistent commitment to those three priority areas demonstrated by a continued investment, an ever-increasing investment in those sectors. So, for example, over the first 50 years, We've seen investment in the physical plant as far as the expansion of the education and as far as the expansion of the health facilities throughout our islands. We've seen an expansion in the physical network. Going forward, we must be able to maintain those assets, Madam President, but also have a consistent level of investment in technology, in training, in human resources, so that we can continually build on those foundations, and then so we can have an education system, a healthcare system, and have that level of security that we can all be proud of, and upon which we can continue to build our nation. The second reason why I think this is one of the most important budgets in our history, Madam President, is we are going now into the third year of the completion of the second and going into the third post-COVID year. This year is very, very pivotal, Madam President, in terms of our economy, because immediately following the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a very, very robust rebound in terms of the economy, in terms of economic growth at the end of the final months of 2021 and as well all of 2022, where in 2022 we saw our economy grow by 14%. In 2023, why I say this year is pivotal, Madam President, is because there are estimates that the level of growth will moderate. And so we did 14% last year. The forecast by the IMF is that we will grow by 4.3% this year. Now, 4.3% when we look at historically what the Bahamas has been growing at over the last 20 years, either like negative growth or 1% or 0.5%. 4 is very healthy. But I think our challenge is, and we have taken on the challenge, is to once again exceed expectations and punch above our weight and have our economy grow at, even though 4.3%, if we achieve it, is a healthy level of growth for our economy, to be able to exceed that. And so that is the challenge, Madam President. And why is it important? I think it's important because in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when our economy was shut down, we saw the dramatic impact and we saw the effect on our finances. And so when our tourism industry was shut down and we could not earn foreign exchange and we had to borrow money to keep the economy and to keep to provide the social support that we needed, we saw our debt to GDP rise to just over 100%. Of course, we've seen it coming down. COVID-19 has shown us, and we believe that we are on the right track to recovery, and we've seen it in the budget figures that I will go on to speak about, Madam President. But what COVID-19 has shown us is how quickly things can change and how quickly your entire country and your entire existence really can be put in such a precarious position that it really behooves us, and that is why I make the point that this budget is so important, that we maintain, even though we are recovering nicely, we maintain the discipline that is necessary for us to get back to those days when our debt was around 50% of GDP. And it will put us in a position to build that headroom, that rainy day situation, Madam President, because we have seen all too well what can happen. And so that is why this budget in particular is so important. Growth is expected to moderate this year. Our fiscal position has improved very well, but we must maintain that discipline in order to continue on the right track, Madam President. Simply put, we must maintain our commitment to sound fiscal management. Madam President, the final point I want to make in this introduction is we believe that as we have enunciated the way to restore our fiscal position and our economy is our commitment to grow the economy, to improve revenue administration, to exercise strict expenditure control and to identify new sources of revenue. Madam President, that is the plan. As I will demonstrate, it has been bearing fruit, and it is a plan that we will continue to execute, because we do not believe that the solution is to try to tax our way out of this situation, as some other countries have attempted to do,
and other administrations,
but indeed to grow our economy. Madam President, so indeed this 2023-2024 budget reaffirms our government's dedication to the Bahamian people and to ensuring a thriving society now and well into the future. The main objective of the 2023-24 budget is to tackle the various economic and societal obstacles that we are currently facing. This budget was prepared to specifically address the challenges related to ensuring food security, enhancing the development of resilient infrastructure that can withstand unexpected events and challenges, improving healthcare services and making those services more accessible to all members of our community, promoting crime prevention efforts and keeping our neighborhoods safe, reducing energy costs and promoting the use of renewable energy, safeguarding the most vulnerable members of our society, and providing those members with the support and resources they need. As well, Madam President, investing in education and skill development for the success of our society, supporting our youth, supporting the arts, supporting sports, implementing responsible financial management practices, and providing increased opportunities for individuals to become homeowners in order to provide stability and security for families and communities. Moreover, Madam President, we remain resolute in our pursuit of fiscal consolidation and reduction of the budget deficit in accordance with our fiscal strategy report. Madam President, we all know that we live in an interconnected world. And we have seen over the years, we have seen the impact of what we call, the economists call it exogenous shocks, right? But external events on our economy. We've seen it over the years. The most glaring, of course, was the recent COVID-19 pandemic and the effect that it has had. And it really demonstrated to us our interconnectedness, our vulnerabilities, so that even following the pandemic and coming out of it, the effects were lingering in terms of, shipping and supply chain and inflation, etc. And so, Madam President, the global economy is gradually improving. The supply chain issues are being resolved. The energy and food markets are stabilizing. To combat the other big challenge has been the 40-year high in inflation in some of the advanced economies in the United States and in the UK. Inflation at 40-year highs. And many of the central banks are enforcing policies and to combat inflation, mainly the raising of interest rates. And I would say, Madam President, I'll speak about it later on, that even that, the raising of interest rates to combat inflation has had an impact on us in terms of our foreign currency denominated debt. But so despite these things getting better, Madam President, there are still a lot of challenges. There's a lot of work to be done to completely see our economy and our finances recover from those challenges. As I said, Madam President, we are part of a global community. And so when we do our forecasting, we look at the projections for the rates of growth of the global economy. And the IMF predicts a growth rate of 2.8% for the global economy in 2023. They're predicting 2.8% growth for the global economy in 2023, as opposed to 4.3% for us. And they are predicting an increase of 3% growth in the global economy in 2024. And so the inflation, Madam President, is the number for inflation. When we look at global inflation, they're expecting inflation to drop from 7% in 2023 to 4.9% in 2024. So still, relatively high given historical numbers and given the target of around, you want to have it around 2%. So the IMF is predicting that the global economy will grow by 2.8% in 2023 and 3% in 2024. As it pertains to the Bahamas, Madam President, the Bahamas National Statistical Institute, in their release of GDP estimates, they revealed that our GDP grew by 14.4% in 2022. And so this indicates, again, a significant and ongoing improvement and recovery from the economic downturn brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. And what is good about the Bahamas, Madam President, is that within the recovery of the global economy, the Caribbean region is recovering very strongly, and within the Caribbean region, the Bahamas is amongst those who are recovering most strongly. Madam President, during and of course this is led by the recovery in tourism, and as indicated by the first 9 months of the fiscal year, the period ending March 2023, we welcomed 6.6 million visitors to our country, 1.2 million air arrivals and 5.6 million arriving by sea. And interestingly, Madam President, as part of the evolution in thinking and in taste and in appetite that has been brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, where more individuals are seeking smaller resorts or what they call local experience, where the Airbnb has continued to emerge as a larger and larger part of our tourism offering. AirDNA, which keeps statistics on occupancy for short-term rentals, affirms the growth in tourism, and it shows that the vacation rental industry is growing very, very positively. And so at the end of March 2023, the average occupancy rate for entire unit listings increased to 69.8% from 61% during the same period last year. So almost 70% occupancy in Airbnbs on offer. And when we look at hotel occupancy for the period ending March 2023 stood at 65% as opposed to 55% over the previous year. And so that shows a continued healthy demand for tourists who come, for a demand for the Bahamas by tourists who come here in large numbers. Madam President, furthermore, on the subject of growing the economy, an ongoing stream of new foreign investment projects are underway, featuring, shovels in the ground and blocks going up, featuring a diverse range of ventures in New Providence, Exuma, Cat Island, Long Island, Eleuthera, etc. And that has, again, contributed to the increase in employment, particularly in the construction industry. Along with the moderation in global inflation, we have also seen a gradual reduction in consumer prices here at home, Madam President. And so the Bahamas National Statistical Institute, again, demonstrated that consumer prices in the Bahamas have been decreasing. In January 2023, consumer prices witnessed a slight dip of 0.1% as compared to December 2022. And furthermore, in February 2023, consumer prices again decreased by 0.1%, small amounts, but moving in the right direction. And the decrease is seen in food and non-alcoholic beverages and miscellaneous goods, Madam President. In terms of the outlook for the domestic economy, the real GDP growth in the Bahamas in 2023 is predicted to continue the momentum seen after the pandemic. However, as I said, the growth rate is expected to moderate to around 4.3%. Again, when we compare that to 14, I think 11 the year in 2021 and then 14 in 2022, this moderation, although a reduction, is still considered very, very healthy when compared to, as I said, the historical growth rates that we have been experiencing. So if we can achieve 4.3, that would be good, but our aim is to ensure that we beat that number. This growth, Madam President, is expected to be supported by ongoing growth in both air and sea arrivals, and I'm sure my colleague who will be second, I don't want to forecast his contribution, but I know he will speak about all of the wonderful work that he and the Deputy Prime Minister have been doing in the Ministry of Tourism. And so, Madam President, likewise, new and ongoing varied scale foreign investment projects in New Providence and the Family Islands are expected to provide additional stimulus to the construction sector. And again, we expect the labor market to continue to improve. In terms of monetary policy, Madam President, external reserve balances remain very, very healthy. And in addition to that, in addition to them being those external reserves being at very, very, in fact, historically high levels, Madam President, is the report by the central bank that those levels are supported largely by what they call events in the real economy, meaning foreign currency being earned within the economy and accruing, as opposed to borrowing of foreign currency to support the reserve. So that is very, very positive, again, Madam President. And we see the impact of all of this. What does this mean? We're talking about, FDI coming and this development and the next shovel in the ground and such. Visitors coming in and occupancy high. What it boils down to, Madam President, as you quite rightly said, people are watching and they want to know what's in this for me. Well, at its very essence, when it's all boiled down, it boils down to jobs and money in the pocket of Bahamians. And I think we were all, most of us at least, were all ecstatic and very happy to see the job statistics that came out last week, Friday, by the Bahamas National Statistical Institute, Madam President, where we saw unemployment at 8.8%, the lowest level, I think, in 15 years. And so what that means, Madam President, because, sometimes people tell me when they see me on the street, they say, well, break that down, right? We line up 100 Bahamians in Rawson Square, 91 of them would be working. So out of 100, 9 might not have a job or might not have looked in the last week. 8.8%. It's phenomenal, Madam President. That means those who are in the labor force who have not retired or who have not said after COVID, well, I stopped working, or who have not immigrated, those who are here, when you do your study, 8.8% unemployment, which is fantastic, Madam President. And again, what that means is when we talk about it all boiling down, 91 out of those 100 Bahamians have a job to go to and get a check or a deposit into their account to be able to support their families. And Madam President, they had Madam President, as a boy, I used to be a wrestling fan, right? And they had a chap named Dusty Rhodes. Yeah. And he was famous.
He wrestled here.
He wrestled here. He was famous, right? And he would get on the television and hype up to the match, right? He would talk a long time. At the end of it, he would say, bottom line is. And then he would say what the bottom line is. So for us, Madam President, the bottom line is people are working, yes, earning a paycheck, yes, being able to support their families. So all of this talk, that's what it means. And so, Madam President, the bottom line is, at the end of the day, the economy is recovering, investments are coming, visitors are coming, the economy is moving, people are working, they're able to support their families, Madam President, which is a wonderful thing. But again, I always like to say, whenever I speak on these matters, is that we feel good, we believe we're on the right track, we're optimistic, but we are cautiously optimistic because of the nature of our economy. But we're doing the work we need to do, and we're getting results, Madam President. In terms of the performance during the first 9 months of the fiscal year that we're about to conclude, Madam President, we are showing steady improvement. And there was a slogan one time, used to go something like, steady as she goes. But we're seeing steady improvement. We're seeing steady improvement. You know, there was a reply to it, which I wouldn't reply, you know? But, you know, it was steady as she goes. Madam President, total revenue for the first 9 months of the fiscal year 22-23 was $2.1 billion, representing an increase of $267.2 million, or 14.5%, Madam President. And so we are on target for the first 9 months of this fiscal year. We don't have all of the figures, official numbers yet, to bring us to, you know, even though we're almost there, we'll have those numbers shortly. We're on track. So 3 quarters through the year, we're just about on target in terms of the percentage of revenue that we collected. And all of that, of course, is supported by an improvement in tax revenue, which is up by $291.3 million in areas such as property taxes, VAT, stamp taxes, gaming taxes, special licenses to conduct special businesses, and departure taxes, excise taxes, and customs, Madam President. And I want to say, we have all of those went up and very nicely. And I want to say, all of this happened in an environment not of increasing taxes to get more taxes, but it is the result of the improvement in the economy, the growth of the economy, and the improvement in the labor market, where you have more people going to work, more people earning money, more people being able to spend money in the economy. And so we see the result in terms of what the government collects, and as well when you combine that with the efforts of the government in terms of better administration, collecting what is lawfully due and outstanding. And so all of this improvement, Madam President, not in an environment of increasing taxes, but improving the growth of the economy and improving the way that the revenues are administered. On the expenditure side, Madam President, total expenditure increased by $145 million to $2.3 billion, and the bulk of that, Madam President, was spending on compensation of employees, where that number increased by $55.7 million. And the increase in the public sector wage bill, Madam President, reflects staff promotions, salary adjustments, and additional hires for staffing needs. So basically, investing money in people, resolving long outstanding industrial agreements. I remember going into a meeting of one of the departments that comes under the ministry that I have the honor of leading, Madam President, and you know, the first thing they said, well, we haven't had our promotions in 16 years. And I'm sure my colleague, the AG, can speak of something similar, or many outstanding human resource related matters. And then you say, okay, well, we'll get on it. And then they give you that look, you know, like, yeah. So the first thing I say is, I know you've heard this before, yes, but we'll get it done. And happily, Madam President, there are some still outstanding, but we've been able to resolve a lot of those issues where back pay was outstanding, promotion, industrial agreements, and it goes to morale, Madam President, and it goes to productivity, and it goes to a feeling of self-worth and importance when an individual has the benefits, that equity and fairness, where an individual has benefits that were due to them that have not been forthcoming, and we're finally able to get those things done, Madam President. And so that is reflected in the increased spending on the recurrent side in terms of compensation to employees. There's some, of course, still left to be done, but our very, very able Minister of State for the Public Service, who has the running of the public service, is very, very passionate about human resource matters and resolving them, particularly when you have individuals who are not getting the benefit of what is due to them. Madam President, Unfortunately, public debt interest payments increased by $58 million to total 391.8 during that first month. And the average cost of borrowing in foreign currency has risen over the past 9 months due to tightened monetary policy on a global scale. And so what has been happening, Madam President, I'm sure all Bahamians, all senators who listen to the news hear about the U.S. Federal Reserve raising interest rates in a bid to slow down inflation in the U.S. Well, that has an impact on us because when we have outstanding debt that is in U.S. dollars, and if that debt is a floating rate debt, it means that as interest rates in the U.S. rise, we do nothing but means the interest rate on our debt rise as well. So when you have those adjustable rate debt, that is what happens. I think the Bahamians listening might have had the experience, for example, if they have a mortgage, and when the prime rate was dropped a few years ago, they saw their mortgage rate drop. If they had a floating rate mortgage, their rate dropped, and they saw their mortgage payment being reduced. Unfortunately, it also works in reverse. So when in the United States they have 40-year high inflation, and the U.S. Federal Reserve decides, okay, in order to reduce this inflation, we're going to raise interest rates. It not only has an impact on them in the States and their mortgage rates that they have to pay if they want to buy a house, it also has an impact on us in terms of money that we have borrowed in US dollars over the years that have an adjustable rate. When they raise the rate, it raises. And so that is one of those things that you cannot completely plan for. You can estimate, but you see where it has had an impact on us, Madam President. It goes back, and I reflect on this just for information, Madam President. Again, when we were shut down and we weren't able to earn US dollars and we had to borrow US dollars in order to support our reserves and to pay bills, to import fuel, etc. So now you see, again, one of the impacts of it. I don't say that, Madam President, to make any sort of political point, but again, it goes to what I want to be, what I am trying to get across throughout this presentation is the need to always be aware that we're not totally out of the woods because of those serious impacts, that those eventualities, those things that can happen, and the impact that it has, and the impact that is lasting. And so, your tourism industry is closed down by necessity. You have to go and incur some debt in order to keep the country afloat. Now, and then you see in the aftermath of the war and other supply chain challenges, inflation in the U.S., it leads to an even a greater impact on us. And so it just once again brings home to us the fact that we have to continue on a disciplined course, Madam President. Madam President, in the capital expenditure component, this is again reporting over the last year. And so for the first 3 quarters, the first 9 months of this year, capital expenditure totaled $193.9 million. And investments in buildings accounted for an increase of about $31.5 million, Madam President. And that was by and large for the rehabilitation and repair of schools that had to be repaired because, of course, our students were going back into those facilities and they had to be in a state for them to be occupied. In terms of the whole picture, Madam President, when we look at the deficit, your incoming minus your outgoings, central government's fiscal performance for the first 9 months, we show a deficit of $216.1 million, which is 37% of what we had originally forecasted. And I think if you look at what it was the prior year, it is down $120 million, Madam President. It was last year, this time it was $336.3 million. And so, Madam President, what again it shows is revenue increasing, expenditure also increasing because there are necessities, and but as a result of the strong increase in revenue, you see a deficit coming down, and what that simply means is we have to borrow less money. And I was very happy to see And I think it might have gone a bit under noticed when we did a borrowing resolution for $45 million in the House of Assembly at the conclusion of the budget communication, Madam President. And we have seen, I have been around to see them in the range of, $400 or $500 million, and then even during the height of the pandemic, even higher. And so what that means is we are adding less to the debt, Madam President, and as we continue to add less and less, and as we move towards what we project to be a balanced budget in the next budget, we begin hopefully to see that level of debt decrease. And so that is a bit on the performance so far, Madam President. And going forward in this year, in the allocation of the resources, the measures within the 2023-24 budget reflect this government's priorities in respect of national security, personal security, economic security, and in food security, as well as securing the lives and livelihoods of the Bahamian people, Madam President. In this budget, we have implemented a more comprehensive approach to fighting crime. And so this covers a full range of interventions, including prevention, detection, prosecution, punishment, and rehabilitation. This budget has strategically placed funds toward rehabilitation of incarcerated individuals and towards decreasing the rate of recidivism. And this will be done by implementing specifically targeted rehabilitation programs, in which many of these rehabilitation efforts will be done through the Second Chance program. We are also planned, Madam President, to begin the building a new judicial complex. This budget has allocated funding for the renovation and construction of community centers in some of our inner city communities. The street lighting initiative and urban renewal program expansion will be continued in this upcoming budget. Funding will once again be allocated for a women's shelter. Furthermore, we are increasing legal aid support for victims of domestic violence, both within the social services framework and within a victim care fund within the Office of the Judiciary. The upcoming budget also contains increased funding for non-government organizations which support victims of domestic violence, including the Crisis Center and Links. In terms of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, enhanced allowances for seagoing and technical personnel will be provided, and 4 new safe vessels, SAFE, will be acquired to continue the execution of our immigration plan, Operation Secure/Restore. In terms of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, over 150 vehicles, including 100 dual cab trucks and 50 brand spanking new motorcycles have been acquired, and new staff will continue to be hired, Madam President. We saw the fantastic passing out last week, Thursday, of over 200 combined regular and reserve officers. We are continuing investments in technology such as CCTV and body cams. This budget also, for the first time, provides funding for a new shantytown or irregular community task force. And this new item of expenditure is expected to support the demolition of illegal and unregulated communities. Madam President, and so we see that the fight against crime and the promotion of national security and indeed personal security under this budget, we are providing finances to implement a multifaceted approach to doing so. Madam President, this budget aims to generate more revenue without increasing taxes, and we intend to implement effective spending measures while utilizing more partnerships with the private sector. Madam President, in this budget, we're talking about expending, and this budget is $3 billion. When I say the budget is $3 billion, this budget is $3 billion, Madam President. Let's see this budget is a $3 billion budget. 3.6 billion. No. $3.3 billion budget, Madam President. spending on the recurrent side goes from, I think, 3 billion and 70, let me give you the exact number. It goes from $3 billion and $73 million. That's the total expenditure in 2022, 2023. We are increasing that to $3 billion and $85 million this year. So last year, we're expending $3,073,728,214. This year, $3,085,536,785. Madam President, $12 million the expenditure is being increased by. $12 million. 0.04%. All right? Yeah, 0.4%. Less than half of 1%.
It's a nominal reduction.
Exactly. Less than half of 1% spending increase. That's less than, as my my colleague, the AG has said, that's less than inflation. So in effect, that's a reduction in spending. That's a reduction in spending. And so, and so, Madam President, when I said earlier,
Credit where credit is due.
when I said earlier that our plan was to, see, Madam President, when you look around the globe, right, you see countries trying to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic and restore the public finances. And you have some, they put in a tax surcharge. Some will put in a special corporate tax to try and close the gap, or special income tax, to a special income tax. If you're earning over a certain amount, you pay a surcharge, and these various surcharges to try and close the budget gap. What we decided to do, what this Davis administration decided to do, was implement a plan to grow the economy, go out into the highways and the byways and seek investment and bring it in, quality investment that would get shovels in the ground and Bahamians to work quickly, grow the economy. We had our Minister of Tourism going and beating the bushes and going out there, bringing the investment here, grow the economy, improve the revenue administration, tell those large taxpayers who have been dodging that you can dodge no more. Not oppressing the ordinary Bahamian, but we know that there are those people out there who have the capability, the means, they know they owe it, they pay in their home country, and so please pay us. And we've been doing that. Controlling expenditure. And so sometimes, Madam President, it gets, oh, the government is spending, the government is wasting, right? We have here a budget, going into this second main budget, an increase on a $3 billion budget, it's a 0.4%, less than 0.5% increase, in effect, a reduction in spending when you take account of inflation. And so what it shows, Madam President, is an administration that is disciplined, because it's very, very easy, and we all know, those of us on this side and those of us on that side, we all know the pressure that comes to bear to spend and for employment and contracts and largesse and everything, all right? And so to be able to say, to be able to hold the line on spending, but at the same time, to be able to generate the level of economic growth that will produce an 8.8% unemployment rate, Madam President, the best in 15 years, shows a degree of discipline and competence when it comes to executing the fiscal plan of the government, Madam President. So without increasing taxes on Bahamians. Madam President, of course, the departure tax will be adjusted for cruise visitors from $18 to $23 for departure from Nassau, Freeport, and Bimini, and $25 from the private islands, Madam President. Departure tax, air departure tax, which is the one that impacts Bahamians mostly, will not increase. It will stay at $29, Madam President. And what we are doing, Madam President, is in this budget, we are introducing a sustainability levy of $3 and a $2 levy for tourism development, Madam President. The $2 will go into special fund to develop the tourism product, to make it more attractive, to bring more visitors, to spend more money. Madam President, sustainability levy of $3. We know that tourism, particularly cruise tourism, but tourism in general, puts a lot of stress on your infrastructure. You know, people come in, use your infrastructure, they're in your environment. You need to be able to generate money to be able to preserve and enhance the sustainability of your industry, Madam President. And I always use the example that I believe it's a small increase, particularly when you look at, you know, the prices of things. I mean, if you go into the airport and try to buy a bottle of water, it's like $4 for one of these. All right. And so when you say, okay, $2 to help us enhance your experience, so when you come, I don't think many visitors would have a difficulty with that, or Bahamians for that matter, Madam President. We're establishing a large taxpayer unit to better improve compliance. We are in the one of the pieces of legislation, the business license regulations, Madam President. We will be increasing the threshold for which businesses have to have their submissions signed by an auditor from 100,000 to 250,000, Madam President. We think this will assist those small businesses in terms of the cost that they have to pay to have their returns submitted to the Department of Inland Revenue. We're clarifying business turnover as well in the Business License Act to, you know, just to provide some more clarity. We are committed to ensure that the revenue agencies in the Family Islands are properly staffed and that they're properly trained. And when we look at, as we get to the Business License Act and the VAT Act, what we're doing is harmonizing the powers of our revenue agents across all of those acts to ensure that they have the powers to be able to enforce compliance. And so the idea, once again, Madam President, is not to harass or, you know, chase down ordinary hardworking Bahamians, but, you know, our agencies need these powers so that when they do confront large taxpayers or perhaps even foreign non-Bahamians who owe taxes to the government, they have the tools at their disposal, either administratively or as a last resort legally through the courts, to be able to enforce what is due and owing, Madam President. Madam President, in this budget, we are eliminating both the duty and VAT on pleasure craft and putting in place an updated fee schedule for the registration of pleasure craft. This shift will encourage domestic registration. We want more people to bring their vessels in and register them and pay an annual registration fee, Madam President. In addition, we have put in place a Maritime Revenue Task Force, and their job will be to ensure that that particular area, the maritime sector, that the government of the Bahamas is able to collect the revenue that is available there. We believe that we have not, in terms of, I'm sure all of us, even right here in New Providence, we drive along the coast and we see the amount of vessels, and you know, you go to the Family Islands, I say where you put me, in terms of the numbers. And so we just want to make sure that those who come and enjoy, they make a contribution so that we can maintain our environment, and you know, should they require services, we have the resources to be able to give it to them. Madam President, all of this work that we talk about, revenue administration, controlling spending, if we restrict it to the central government, it will be for naught. Because as you know, we have various state-owned enterprises that are supported by the government, and that discipline needs to extend to those state-owned enterprises as well. And so moving forward, those state-owned enterprises will be required to operate under clear expenditure guidelines in terms of hiring, salary increases, employee benefits, and capital commitments. They'll be under very, very clear and stringent guidelines. And we have issued, the Ministry of Finance, the Prime Minister has issued guidelines to the board and management of these state-owned enterprises to ensure that there are no surprises. I don't like surprises in terms of unknown expenditure commitments, especially in the nature of bills. You know, I tell people, I say, boy, when you're working in the Ministry of Finance, 3 o'clock on a Friday, someone calling you and say, well, this person need to get paid today, you know? It's not a good surprise. You know, so you want to do away with that sort of thing. No surprises. Madam President, we're pleased to say that our outreach to the globe, going and telling our story and recruiting investment and having sometimes to jump on a plane to go and do it, we've seen some tremendous results. And so now, Madam President, we are in a position where we can begin to see those things in terms of investment missions and going to engage with investors. We begin to see that. We continue to do it, but we're pleased to see that we've taken and we've heard some of the public commentary, and so we've said, okay, we believe that what we're doing is necessary and adequate, but we hear it, and so you'll see we've our allocations in terms of travel have been reduced to lower than the pre-pandemic levels, Madam President. And I say that to say, I remember early in the administration. You pick up the newspaper, Madam President, and you have an economist say, Bahamas will be in the hands of the IMF within 1 or 2 years.
That RBC crazy.
I said, what?
Crazy.
I said, but and then you hear people repeating it. I remember early in the administration, I said to the finance officials, I says, we normally don't go to these IMF spring meetings. We normally just go to the annual meeting, but I think we have to go because some of the chatter that we hear, this in the early stages, chatter that we're hearing about the Bahamas and its prospect, it doesn't jibe or it doesn't connect with the reality. What we call the chatter doesn't reflect the fundamentals. And so I remember there was a lot of chatter about, even in the other place, about, the bonds of the government of the Bahamas are trading at distressed levels, and people ain't have no confidence in you, and what this can cause. And so you have to get on and because people consume this stuff internationally, you have to get on a Zoom call with investors. You have to go to New York. You got to go to Washington, D.C. to the IMF meetings and sit down in front of them and say, look, we are confident in our strategy. We think it's going to work. And then you start to engage as well with the local financial community, Madam President. And then you begin to see things settle down and go in the right direction until one of the bond analysts said to us in a meeting more recently, said that, the Bahamas, buying the Bahamas government bonds on the international market was a trade of the year last year. People made millions, including our National Insurance Board, who was able to go in and make some, and Bahamians, financial institutions and individuals were able to go because at that time the world had a dim view of the prospects of the Bahamas. Our bonds were trading at a low price. They were able to go buy it at the low price. Yes. And as a result of our continued recovery and our outreach as the prices went up, they were able to realize significant gains, Madam President. And so that is what outreach does for you, Madam President. And
good job.
So I say all that to say that is what you have to do when you're trying to stop that negative trend. You have to get out there, Madam President. And as I said, we believe that it was necessary, but we hear the some of the commentary amongst the public, and we have demonstrated that reduction, Madam President. Madam President, the government of Bahamas has also signed an agreement with Oracle for the best-in-class human resource management system to better service what we call our internal clients. Madam President, there is an issue, there continues to be an issue, for example, with individuals who retire from the public service and they have to wait months, sometimes even longer, to get their pensions and their gratuities because of, this department has to talk to the next department. They have to do what they call progressions and all of those things, and people wait. Some information might be lacking. This human resource management system is an effort to do away with that sort of thing, Madam President, so that when, it's a serious matter if one were to retire, then the paycheck stops, but the pension doesn't start. And that can be very, very stressful, Madam President. So in terms of the Oracle human resource system, we think that will go a long way to eliminate that problem. Madam President, the issue of the contributory pension plan for the public sector, this is something that we all know is necessary. What we have now is what they call a pay-as-you-go. When we get to the budget, you will look to see that there's an item in the budget for pensions. It just comes out of revenue, Madam President. There's no fund where contributions are made into. What we're doing is we are drafting legislation. It's near completion, and that we will once again present it to the public sector unions for their feedback, because the unfunded pension plan, where simply pensions are paid out of government revenue, it's unsustainable. And in fact, Madam President, I remember working on this back in the last PLP administration in between 2012 and 2017. And we drafted the legislation. No, we didn't draft the legislation. We did a study. We shared it with the unions, and the thinking then was, because of vesting and those sorts of things, where you cannot, someone who's already in the system, you cannot now impose it because on them. But what the idea was, new entrants will then join the system, and so that over the next 10 years and 20 years and 30 years, then you will see the benefit as the fund continues to grow. And I remember doing some work on it, and if I recall, the unions were all for it, right? But the unions were all for it. We had it because we said, listen, we're not going to force people who are already in to do it, or no retroactivity, but going forward, new entrants. And then so as it builds, in 30 years, then you have a fund. Now you say, okay, 30 years, but when you look, okay, 2012 to 2023, that's already 11 gone. But Madam President, at that time, we were introducing VAT, right? And boy, not boy, but I think at that time, I think let's bite one, let's do one big thing at a time. Yeah. And so unfortunately, it went dormant. And then things happen, governments change, and then you have COVID and all those sorts of things. So it goes on the back burner. But I remember working on it, and
that
was
a big project.
Oh, that was a big project. Oh boy, but no, but it's necessary, and I think at the end of the day, I think the fact that we didn't proceed with it at that time because of the studies, and then again we're in the middle of the VAT implementation, and I got the feeling that we didn't want to do more than one huge thing like that, which is a tremendous reform, but it goes such a long way, Madam President, and it's not only for to say new entrants coming in. You have a lot of people now who work for the government, or they work for the government, they work for school boards, they work for local government. Some of them have retired, no pension, no nothing. Now you say, well, they work for the school board or they work for local government. Well, as far as they're concerned, they work for government. All right, they work for government. They work at the clinic, at the school, they work for government. No pension, no benefits. And so now they will have an opportunity as well to join in, and even people who want to sort of, what they say, top up, make an additional contribution as part of a savings plan, they will be able to do so, Madam President. And so I think that is going to be a tremendous advance and continue the sort of fiscal reform that we want to do, Madam President. Madam President, the issue of debanking and underbanking and banks making a business decision to remove their brick and mortar presence and they make a business decision, okay, that's not making enough money. Don't make sense to say that we're gone, right? It is, what we're doing, we're working on a project. Some private sector individuals are proposing to the government what they call agency banking. We're looking to get the Post Office Savings Bank involved as well, to bring bank. It's done in other countries. I think what is taking the time now is to ensure that there can be proper know your customer and that sort of thing. But that is something that we will be taking an aggressive view in terms of making sure that we can have banking services in these family islands. I was saddened, I'm sure all of us were, Madam President, when we heard in one of our communities where the one ATM that went down and people get into physical altercation. That is not something that we need, especially when the technology is there and it's been done in other countries, Madam President. And so that is something that the public can look forward, particularly in our family islands. And as well, the central bank on their behalf will be undergoing a program to reintroduce the sand dollar to the Bahamian public and get that momentum flowing again, Madam President. In terms of infrastructure, which is so important to the economies of our family islands, projects are planned in Cat Island, Long Island, and Eleuthera. I think many of those are underway, Andros as well, and the airport projects that will be coming on stream in Grand Bahama, Bimini, and several of the other family islands, Madam President. In terms, again, of personnel, in Grand Bahama, we have allocated $4.7 million to continue their employment program to assist in Grand Bahama. Of course, we have provisions for the salary increases that are due under the multitude of industrial agreements that this administration has been able to conclude. And we also have allocations for 3-year agreements to run from July 2022 to June 2025, and to increase allowances and salary scales through a $40 million industrial agreement. Funding has also been designated in the Ministry of Finance, Madam President, to undertake a thorough evaluation of salaries for all public sector staff, except MPs. This undertaking is anticipated to serve as an impartial benchmark for future discussions regarding compensation in the public sector. And what this is, Madam President, is, the public sector is, the government competes with the private sector in terms of attracting qualified employees, qualified individuals to work. And so what we want to do is to do a study to see what the comparisons are in the private sector when you take that, put that up against what the government is able to offer in terms of salary and benefits, and see what we can do in the public sector to improve the attractiveness so we can attract more young people, more, not even young, but more people to come into the public sector and to give their talents to the service of the country, Madam President. In terms of food security, a new agricultural administration cadet program will be implemented. We have funding to expand BAMC and the farmers markets. And we have, of course, the Golden Yolk Egg Program for the purchase of chickens and domestic egg production. Greenhouse investments. The Fish Pot Program will continue to train fishermen on making and using pots as a means of fishing and selling the pots as a means of income. Citrus tropical orchard development assistance in Andros, Cat Island, and Eleuthera, and the hydroponic program and raised bed initiatives in primary schools for early training for a more efficient means of growing produce. Very, very exciting stuff, Madam President, because, historically, when you talk about farming, people just think, you're out in the hot sun. But, in terms of greenhouse, hydroponics, raised beds, those things, new methods, and if we teach it at an early age in the primary school, I think that would go a long way to encourage more people to get involved in agriculture, Madam President. In terms of renewable energy, we will have funding in this budget, as well as we engaging the private sector towards the implementation of microgrids in various primary islands. Those are smaller installations to provide solar power. 22 million has been allocated for the adoption of solar, photovoltaic as battery technologies. And we have grids installed at CV Bethel, Doris Johnson, and Senior High School, TG Glover Primary School, and we want to expand that in other schools and as well clinics, public libraries, other public buildings. We have a budget of $1.8 million for that. And we are reducing the duty on natural gas to a flat 20 cents per gallon so we can make that more accessible, Madam President. And the government as well, on behalf of the Bahamas Development Bank, is negotiating with the European Investment Bank. I had a conversation with officials from the European Investment Bank last week we're negotiating a $20 million facility to encourage the adoption of green technology among small and medium-sized businesses in the Bahamas, and that will run through to the Bahamas Development Bank. And so that's something I stress to them that we want to really move aggressively on. In terms of education, sports, and our youth, Madam President, we're just, investing. We have expanded BTVI to the Family Islands. We've increased teacher salaries and implemented a retention bonus. In order to address the shortage in teachers, we've recruited 200 additional teachers, teachers' aides and guidance counselors. Learning loss, Madam President, it might sound like a buzzword, but, we all know, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to go to virtual. Some people didn't, as the Ministry of Education tried to give instruments. Of course, they couldn't have enough for everybody. Sometimes everybody tried. MPs tried to buy, corporates, everybody tried to buy the instruments. Of course, they had some more damage. Then you have people who didn't have access to the internet, and didn't have light on. So, bottom line, Madam President, students fell behind. World Bank did a study on learning loss showing that this region, the Caribbean, Latin America region, was the second worst after, I think it was like Southeast Asia, or one of those, I think it was Asia. The second worst in terms of learning loss, in terms of the amount of time that students missed. And so now, and then of course, it goes on to say that you have to try and catch up. Because if you don't, then that loss sort of reverberates straight into the future of those individuals. It affects their capability to get a good paying job or get a job in general. And so that is so very much important, Madam President, addressing that issue of learning loss. To the extent that you have like the IDB and the World Bank and those becoming more increasingly aware of it and committed to providing funding to address it. I remember, speaking to one of my colleagues and what they did, something similar to what we did, the Find Every Child initiative, where you go and find all these, children that are out of school, go and find where they are, walk about in the communities, find them, get them back in school. And then a national learning loss testing initiative, where the testing is going on to see the level of where our students are now. And then when you see the level that they're at, then you're able to put in the remediation efforts, Madam President. As my colleague, I'm sure, will speak about, we have increased funding for our BAMSI. We have funding for Performing Arts School. And Madam President, this is one of my favorites when we're looking at this National Breakfast Program that we intend to roll out on a pilot basis in September. It's very, very important to this administration that, students, they're already facing many challenges. One of them shouldn't be hunger. When they go to school, they're hungry, they can't concentrate. And so that is something we're looking forward to implementing on a pilot basis and then rolling out throughout the school system, Madam President. We are increasing the allocations for independent schools and children's homes. And we have allocated funding to host the next edition of Carifta Swimming Championships, which I think we've won about 5 straight. And the first edition of the triathlon, the Carifta Triathlon, and as well we have funding for the next World Relays, sports tourism, Senator Roll.
Tourism in paradise.
And we have also allocated funding to continue and expand the National Youth Guard program in this budget, Madam President, where we graduated the first cohort, and we want to be able to continue that program where young people are trained in the areas of assisting people in the event of natural disaster. They're trained to be able to go out and assist with rescue and bringing supplies, etc. Madam President, and that reminds me of the pride I felt, several years ago when I was able to share in the graduation of some young people from the Technical Cadet Corps program. And just reading the history in the booklet and seeing that it was started in 1989 and it's endured for so long. And I think now they're trying to get it back because it was interrupted after COVID. And I look forward to the expansion of something like this National Youth Guard program that will teach assistance in disaster recovery and helping those who are victims of disaster. But I'm sure within that training, you have things like discipline and teamwork and respect and all of those things, which are so much very important to be instilled in our young people, Madam President. Of course, in health, we have the new facility in Grand Bahama. Tremendous efforts have been made to repair and upgrade public clinics in the Family Islands. And in the promotion of better health, we are tackling, this whole issue of vaping and nicotine and tobacco, and as well in terms of discouraging use. We're increasing duty on vaping juices. Sorry for those who vape. But for nicotine and tobacco products meant to help people with the withdrawal, we're taking duties off of those. And we have funding for the National Organ Transplant Program, Madam President. And as I move to towards my conclusion, Madam President, I just want to say that it goes, I think it went a little bit perhaps under the radar, so we have to just continue to talk about it and do some public relations in relation to it. But the issue of where we are extending the first home exemption up to a triplex.
Yes.
So what has happened in the past is if you build a triplex, one person, let's say you have 3 brothers or some siblings or maybe even some friends, they say, okay, land price high, we're going to buy one piece of land and we'll build a triplex and each one live in one unit, and that would be their first home. In the past, one person was able to get the first-time home exemption. Now, up to a triplex, each of those individuals will be able to get that first home exemption. It's another step. Yes, it's another step towards trying to do something else to bring down the price of housing. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Because siblings do it, and I'm sure maybe close friends would do it. And so now everybody would get the exemption, Madam President. It's a game changer. And we are making an investment in the rent-to-own program. And again, we're lowering duties on select building materials, things like flashing, drip caps, nails, screws, to alleviate the cost of construction of new homes. So extending that first-time home exemption and then continuing to bring the duties down on construction materials, Madam President. And the last thing I'll say on that, well, maybe not the last thing, but one more thing I'll say on that extension of that exemption, Madam President, is we know, I mean, all of us, if we do some research, we know the benefits in terms of the social benefits of home ownership. They do studies to show that the children tend to do better in school, they get in less problems, there's better community upkeep when people own their homes. So there's an economic benefit, of course, but there's social benefits, and so we feel very happy to be able to do that, to assist in bringing those prices down, Madam President. And so, Madam President, in this budget, we are seeking to national security, personal security, health, food security, Madam President. This budget ensures that we go as far as we can to make sure that our nation's needs are met with a focus on those critical areas. Madam President, I will end sort of where I began. by saying, we recall the words of Sir Lyndon Pinling on the occasion, speaking again about 50th anniversary. And I begin by saying the young people who are graduating, who are coming out into the world, and us. And this being one of the most important budgets in our history, I believe. Sir Lyndon Pinling, on the occasion of the acceptance of the Bahamas to the membership of the United Nations, quote, "As a new nation, the Bahamas will adhere to its commitment to ordered, reasoned, unemotional, and evolutionary progress." Madam President, let us read that in conjunction with the preamble to our Constitution, which says, our freedom will be ensured by I'm paraphrasing, or will be guaranteed by a national commitment to self-discipline, industry, loyalty, unity, and abiding respect for Christian values and the rule of law. Madam President, as we move forward, it is a tremendous honor for me personally to be able to stand here and move for second reading of this budget in this place at this time in our history, which is very, very critical because, as I said, we have had a tremendous bounce coming out of COVID. This year is the true test when it is anticipated that the global economy's growth will moderate. It's anticipated that ours will moderate, but our commitment to providing the services and the goods to the Bahamian public and to managing their resources on their behalf subsists. It continues, and the onus is on us to make sure that every day we do our best to make sure that those scarce resources that we have are properly allocated, properly managed, properly accounted for in the full glare of the Bahamian people. And so, Madam President, thank you very much, and I move for second reading and committal for a bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st July 2023 and ending 30th of June 2024.
Good budget. Good budget. Well done. Well done. Well done. Well done.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis, for your contribution. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Randy Rowe.
I'll do your services for you, Randy. Sir, I'm excited to hear this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right away. Thank you very much, Madam President. She recognizes you? Yeah, recognize. Thank you very much, Madam President. Right before I begin, I'm reminded, I want to tell a quick story of the days before there was GPS. I took a trip to Grand Bahama, Madam President. Long time. And at my trip to Grand Bahama, I had a function at the Grand Lucaya. And this was before, like I said, GPS. So I wasn't sure of how to get there. So I remember heading south towards the airport. And I got to a second roundabout. When I got to that second roundabout, I saw someone that I knew. And I asked them for directions to the Grand Lucaya Hotel. The gentleman said, I'm not going to the function, but I'm going that way. But if you follow me, when I get to the corner, I will stop and point you in the direction of the hotel. I said, but you must follow me. And so I followed, and he said, when I go left, you go left. When I go right, you go right. And when I get to that roundabout, I will point you in the right direction. I say that to say when I think of some of my good brothers and sisters who have gone on, the late George Smith, Ed Bethel, my good brother, and of course even my mom that I lost just late last year. I am thankful that even though they have gone on home, I've been able to follow them during this time. And so I'm grateful and thankful for persons whose shoulders we stand on. And again, my condolences to all those who have lost loved ones as of recent. Madam President and colleagues, good afternoon. I stand here this evening to second a bill for an act for the appropriate diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expense of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I am indeed grateful to our Prime Minister and all whom shoulders I stand on for this opportunity to share with you today. I am grateful to God, family, and country. I stand before you this afternoon to second this budget, which also happens to be the second budget of the Davis administration. There is still much work to do, Madam President, but I am proud of our progress thus far. I wish to join the many others in both congratulating and thanking the Minister Alcides and the entire Ministry of Finance team for their efforts and amazing dedication in helping us to reach this goal. Today, I stand before you to discuss the Ministry of Tourism's plan to revitalize and restructure of Bay Street. Madam President, let me brag about tourism for a minute. The Bahamas is the place to be, like the young one says. It's the party, meaning we are the standard. This year alone, we have welcomed more than 3 million visitors to our shores, and we're only in the 6th month. We are the dream and reality you never knew you had. However, that's only a feather in our cap. Madam President, let me start with the film industry. The film industry in the Bahamas is in a healthy state. Yes, in a healthy state. Since it has had a remarkable recovery from the pressures of the recent pandemic. Similar to most industries, the film business took a great hit when travel was severely restricted in 2020 due to the pandemic. When travel resumed, film crews, like many other people, were reluctant to travel. The pandemic caused many of them to stay near their homes. However, we have finally seen a complete turnaround in international film crews traveling to the Bahamas for productions. In just 5 months, from January to May of this year, the Bahamas has done more film business than it did in the entire year of 2022. Wow. In fact, Madam President, revenue from film, television, photo shoots, documentaries, and music videos are up 168% from January to May of this year compared to the same period last year. Yes, film business has almost tripled in the Bahamas over that period. With 6 months to go in the calendar year, we anticipate great things in terms of volume of business that will be done by before we hit New Year's Eve. Filming has also surpassed last year's pre-pandemic numbers. As of the end of May 2023, film revenue in the Bahamas is running 44% above the same period, January to May of 2019. Just to name one of our successes, Madam President, the Bahamas was pleased to be the location of 2 episodes of the television show entitled Johnson's. Just to be clear, Madam President, this show this is a show that in less than 3 months ago, I traveled with the Deputy Prime Minister and Film Commissioner to Atlanta to meet with the producers, and we convinced them to shoot in the Bahamas. This show airs on ION and Bounce TV networks, and its executive producers is the famous Cedric the Entertainer. Yes, my colleague, he's a capper. He's a comedian and radio show personality, D.G. Huntley, who is a regular cast member of the show. It shows the importance of relationships. Johnson's filmed the series in the Bahamas from the end of May until the middle of June. It was a tremendous film event for the Bahamas because it will bring us 3 things that we look for in film projects. Those 3 things are direct spend, employment, and promotional value. First of all, in direct spend, the show pumped real dollars in our economy. The final numbers are still being tallied, but the spend was well into the 6 figures. My brother and colleague, Minister Alcides, I need my film incentive. That money was spent around dozens of individuals and businesses. So we got a lot of employment in the short time that the show was here. Among those who were employed by the show was a Bahamian director. It is very rare for an international show to come to the Bahamas and entrust the entire production to a local director. But it happened, Madam President, on this show. So I want to publicly congratulate Leovaldo Stubbs on an excellent job he did on directing the episodes of the show, which will be seen on new US networks and around the world through streaming services. Good job. In addition to the director, the show hired a crew that consisted of Bahamian lighting experts, Bahamian rigging experts, a Bahamian production coordinator, a Bahamian production assistant, and many, many more. In addition, the television show stayed at shot scenes at 2 local resorts. They used dozens of actors and actresses, and even more importantly, Madam President, several Bahamian actors had speaking roles on the show. This included some of the local entertainers whose music will also be featured on the shows. This is big, Madam President. I was so proud of this. And of course, Jean Canoe and other Bahamian cultural formats have a prominent place in the show. In terms of promotions, at least 6 million people will see the first run of this show when it airs on television. It is estimated that millions more will see it in reruns, but beyond that, due to the world-class filming experience that is delivered by Bahamas Film Commission and other professionals in the country, I believe a lasting relationship has come out of this Johnson's trip to the Bahamas. Producers of the show are now making their way to New Orleans right now to participate in a panel that will specifically discuss filming in the Bahamas. Madam President, they will be sharing their Bahamas experience at the Essence Film Festival in New Orleans, where the Bahamas television series Beneath the Gates will be screened. They are promoting us and as a filming destination just because they had a great experience when they filmed here. And they are also prepared to do the same thing throughout the rest of the fiscal year as we collaborate on other projects that can be done in the Bahamas. Grand Bahama,
Yes, sir.
stay tuned.
Yes, sir.
Madam President, we are working hard to position the Bahamas as the premier film destination of the Caribbean. To that, we are meeting with the movers and shakers in the industry. Without a doubt, many in this place have read about our recent meetings we've had with the CEO of Netflix. But there are many others whom we are meeting to form partnerships of various kinds. And these will be announced as soon as they are finalized. Meanwhile, we will not forget our local talent. And we want to remind the public of the many international awards won by Bahamian productions such as Gumbe Kids. In addition, Bahamian director Kareem Mortimer has had success with his film called Vision. It's the story of Sahara Christie. The docudrama won 2 Communicator Awards recently from the Academy of Interactive and Visual Arts. So, we will continue to support our local talent, and we will continue to promote the Bahamas to the world in film. Now, Madam President, I wish to address sports tourism. As we approach the 50th year of independence, we are mindful of the foundation established by our forefathers who had, excuse me, sorry, I need some water. Okay. Who had the generosity and strategy to create opportunities for Bahamian athletes and sports industry hopefuls to receive the training and education needed to compete and operate globally. Today, we can boast about the many accomplishments of this small island nation, from producing world-class athletes to hosting world-class events. But we're just getting warmed up. Madam President, our strategies have changed, but our mission remains the same, which is to increase ownership opportunities for all Bahamians. At the Ministry of Tourism, Investment and Aviation, we are continuing to establish our brand as a sports mecca of the Caribbean. We are diversifying our sponsorship portfolios to ensure that we are getting the most return on our investments and hitting all of our targets. We are aggressively going after new markets in sports, and we are engaging in the Bahamian sport experts who benefited during the first 50 years of our nation building to help take us into the next 50 years by leveraging their business relationships and contacts worldwide to bring even more business to the Bahamas. Between July 2022 to present, we supported sports-related activities and events that have delivered over 20,000 room nights. Events like the White Sands Bahamian Golf Invitational that brought 20 NCAA Division I teams from top universities like Duke, San Diego State, Texas State, University of Nebraska, University of Delaware, and others. And Madam President, we are currently in talks with Bahama Professional Golf Association to make even a greater impact for Bahamians in the sport of golf. We supported the Babe Ruth Caribbean Championships, an event that is linked to a network of over 1 million players in more than 11,000 leagues with over 1.9 million volunteers. This year, there are players coming here from the Caribbean, United States, and as far as the Netherlands and China. And in tandem with our strategy, we are working with organizers to help establish the Bahamas as the home of the Babe Ruth and Cal Ripken's Caribbean Championships so that we increase our visitors' arrival year over year. The Don't Blink Home Run Derby is another event we supported that has great potential to have significant impact, economic impact, and is spearheaded by our very own young and talented Bahamian Todd Isaac Jr. Madam President, together he has brought over 60 current Major League Baseball players, including Jazz Chisholm, 20 former Major League players, 4 Hall of Famers, and Major League Players Association Executive Director Tony Clark. Madam President, we support events like these because they are Bahamian-led, because they are not just one-off events, and because we can go after their association meetings and conferences, their families and fans, convincing them all to come to the Bahamas. Madam President, we are going after gymnastics and cheerleading events that today bring over 4,000 visitors for just one of those events. We're exploring new opportunities in recreation and passion sports. Events like pickleball, t-ball, drone competitions, esports, aqua cricket, just to name a few. We are pushing more events to the Family Islands. Yes, my Bimini, you are included. And not just traditional events, but events such as beach and cycle events, marathons, and adventure sports. Finally, Madam President, the Ministry of Tourism, Investment, and Aviation was part of the team that won the bid for us to host the World Relays next year. And with this event being a qualifier for the Paris Olympics in 2024, we have already mobilized to develop a sales and marketing strategy to seize this opportunity for global exposure. Before, during, and after event is held, the Ministry of Tourism, Sports, and Communications teams are working along with the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture, local organizing committees to ensure that we make an economic impact for our nation that will resonate for years to come. Madam President, time is a jealous mistress. Some try to do as much as they can, as fast as they can, to maximize the experience. And some don't respect nor appreciate the mere fact that they have been afforded the grace and opportunity of time. Time to plan, time to innovate, time to reveal and appreciate the experiences, the lessons learned because of time. Speaking from personal experience, Madam President, I thought that I had all the time in the world with my mother. And as many of us can relate and reflect, we feel as though our loved ones that have transitioned have gone on too soon. We wish for more time to learn, more time to just be. These sentiments are also applicable to experiences or situations that are indelibly etched in our being. Time has afforded us many opportunities, some good and some not so great. But at the end of it all, we've learned from it. we've learned from the hallmark of our nation, the Right Honorable Sir Lyndon Pinlan, the Right Honorable Hubert Ingram, the Right Honorable Perry Christie, Sir Milo Butler, a recently departed George Smith, Dame James, Janet Bostwick, and the list goes on and on. They were the cornerstones of our nation. They provided structure and direction, showing us the way to go after they left the battlefield and laid down their swords and shields. And because they were forward thinkers and had a foresight and forethought to give us a roadmap of what a better Bahamas ought to look like, in this day, we are now able to build upon those cornerstones, giving us the opportunity to replace, correct, and improve upon them and their mishaps. We now realize that the roadmap was tailored specifically for us as a nation by our forefathers, and Madam President, the Davis administration has built upon that rock and created a plan, a blueprint that will not only benefit us now, but it will also benefit us for future generations. To date, the blueprint is responsible for the uptick in our economy. Even though time has not always been kind to us and has thrown us through some loops, we have proven that we are resilient. Grand Bahama has proven that it is resilient. This is our time, and as we recover, and the Ministry of Tourism has been charged with restructuring of downtown area, in Deputy Prime Minister's contribution to the budget, he made several assertions, one being that we are working for you. And guess what? He ain't lie. This Davis administration is working for you. This is indisputable, and the Deputy Prime Minister so eloquently articulated our triumphs, but some like to play forget. So I'm going to say it again, just in case some of you need a little reminder. Since September 2021, add these to our administration's list of successes. In Grand Bahama, we promised a new hospital, and guess what? So said, ground has been broken, and we will provide updates as to our progress as expected completion dates. In education, contract negotiations with new and existing teachers are underway. I can get to that, don't worry about them, we can get to that. We are promised new schools, so stay tuned. Agriculture is on the move. Our Minister of Agriculture is doing big things. He is ensuring food security and self-sustainability through agriculture and fisheries. As a matter of fact, he is driving force behind the Golden Yoke program. And I'm sure my colleague in the Senate will talk about that as well. We promised affordable housing, and we delivered. In our family islands, many upgrades are on the way. I don't want you all to think I forgot about the mentioned $600 billion legit dollar investment deals signed the latter part of 2021. We don't do fake. The $6 billion woman, my colleague, Director of Investments, Ms. Felicia Woods-Hanna, was hands-on. She did her due diligence and made sure that everyone was who they said they were, and ensured absolute compliance prior to signing any document. And that billion was with a B. Madam President, what the Bahamas offers is outwardly an effort to reignite conversations to better our best domestic and international footprints, and to also increase revenue. In this time, in this new day, we understand that change requires a deft touch. But we must also understand that comfort and growth are not mutually beneficial and cannot exist within the same space. Therefore, change must happen because tourism is everybody's business. The Ministry of Tourism, along with the Ministry of Works, the Department of Environmental Health Services, and other ministries will ensure that we provide a social climate that is safe and secure for all. And as we look forward to being better than our best, regulations, compliances, and best practices are a must. We understand that in order for this to happen, we first need to change the culture and mindset. Some of our initiatives are as follows. Create a superior customer service-oriented experience that will create memories and experiences for generations to come. In order for us to achieve this goal, the Ministry of Tourism would like to implement and standardize policy and procedures for all businesses and vendors in the industry. We intend to create the ultimate guest experience by creating segues for guests that need to quickly maneuver through traffic to make it to their port to embark on time. It has been brought to our attention that some guests have missed their departure times because they were stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic when closing our roads. Madam President, we must consider all stakeholders. Bringing Gombe back to Bay Street. Revitalizing Junkanoo Beach will finally undergo a much-needed transformation. The Department of Lands and Surveys completed their assessment and survey of Junkanoo Beach, and I am pleased to report that finally order and structure will be returned to this area. Madam President, that dumpster that you see along West Bay Street, right before Junkanoo Beach, will be gone in short order. And the proper paperwork to remove this has already been signed. Revitalizing the importance of representation and regulations, the stakeholders located on Junkanoo Beach has formed the Junkanoo Beach Vendors Association and recently signed on with the trade union. This is what I call progress. In August of 2023, we shall continue the demolition of the dilapidated buildings and derelict buildings. The demolition task force, formed by Deputy Prime Minister Cooper and headed by myself, have identified and outlined a number of buildings that are not only a health hazard, but are also an eyesore in the downtown area. We have also been in communication with transport and have started the conversation to assist with the rerouting of some jitney drop-off and collection points. Madam President, one of the places that you always see a bottleneck is right here on East Bay in the front of government publications. Again, we have ways that we think will make it better, and we intend to communicate, collaborate with transport to see how we can make it easier for all Bahamians. Common areas will be regularly maintained, inclusive of, but not limited to, landscaping, the removal of stray animals, the removal of outdated utility boxes, and the branding of planters and replacing damaged stones on the thoroughfare.
Better work with animal not-for-profits when you deal with those stray animals.
Right away, sir. I am pleased to announce that subject to an in-house tenders board and sign off by our permanent secretary, a local landscaping company shall be identified to maintain the greenery in downtown Nassau. We intend to add more benches and seating areas for guests of the downtown area, and not just for those who simply came to sit and hang out all day. We intend to increase the number of tourism ambassadors to make it easier to help with guests who have difficulty in finding places downtown. And we've also heard the cry of those who are on the eastern end of downtown since the opening of the cruise port. And we will make sure that there are people in place to help you find all of the stores downtown. We intend to collaborate with the Ministry of Works for the cleaning of, as well as the installation of additional drainage vents. Madam President, I pass all the time right in the corner there of Charlotte and Bay, and there's water that sells right there, and taxi drivers have made mention of it before. I want to let them know that I've been in contact with Ministry of Works, and we intend to get that sorted out as soon as possible based on our relationships with the Ministry of Works. We will ensure that all vendors and shop owners are in complete compliance with the laws within the Commonwealth and have the proper permits and licenses to operate on Bay Street. We will also increase the number of garbage bins along Bay Street. And we will also liaise with the Department of Environmental Health to increase the collection times and dates. We can talk with that too. We are in active talks with a major cruise line, and they have agreed to partner with us in the cleaning of Bay Street. The details of this agreement will be announced as soon as it is completed. We will also be enforcing the sanitation clause in shop owners' executed management agreements. Bearing that, we will then engage the Department of Inland Revenue business license section. If people aren't willing to comply with the laws, then I must call my good friend, the senator responsible for Inland Revenue, as we cannot allow this to continue to be a hamper in keeping Bay Street clean. We will implore the owners of spaces and buildings on Bay Street to maintain their property. We will not tolerate littering and disposal of waste on our streets. The government is responsible for collection and removal of refuse in common areas. Shop owners must do their part to keep their surroundings clean. If the rules aren't adhered to, fines will and must be incurred. We shall have regular consultations with stakeholders as we value their input. In partnering with industry stakeholders, our overreaching goal is to revitalize downtown area and also to enhance the overall experience for all international and domestic guests, while positively motivating the socio-economic climate of the area. Madam President, again, tourism is everybody's business. Just a little side note. In speaking about tourism being everybody's business, the other day someone sent me a TikTok. Yeah, I said it, a TikTok. I'm not that old, you know. It was a TikTok about how a woman flew thousands of miles to come to get her hair done in the Bahamas. Listen to this. Thousands of miles to come and get her hair done in the Bahamas. Listen, please don't ask me specifics. All I can say is that it was crouched hairstyle, something they said. Crochet, okay. As you can see, that's not my forte. When I watched the clip, I was confused and asked if it was sent to me in error. The response was, read the comments. I was in awe at the number of comments the hairdresser had received with people wanting to come to the Bahamas to get their hair done. Let that sink in. So yes, I'm saying it again. Tourism is everybody's business. Our community standard is that we speak truth to standard. In speaking that truth, I understand that there has been some noise on there about the measures being taken to improve downtown area. Madam President, I've only listed a few of our initiatives given my time constraints. Please also note that the government is only responsible for common areas. This is why it is so important to foster these relationships with stakeholders, as the upkeep also affect the businesses as well. I've heard that some people have concerns about, I heard of some people who had some concerns about some prisoners assisting with the cleanup and maintenance of the strip of West Bay Street and East Bay Street. It was a part of some initiative with the 50th anniversary. Okay? My response to that is, yes, and they are still people. And we can all agree that there is a stigma about the hiring and acceptance of convicted felons. As a part of their rehabilitation, whether it be working in downtown area or working at other locations, these people are undoubtedly learning a skill, and that would be hopefully would assist with their ascension back to society upon their release. Who knows, after meeting and interacting with some shop owners or patrons, they might parlay these relations into a legitimate, successful business. Let those people live. Madam President, Madam President, we know that it took some time for us as a country to grow, to get. We know that it took some time as a country to grow, to get to this point, but we are here. It also took some time for us to be accurately aware of the importance of time and place in order to appropriate the progress, Madam President, but we are here. My good colleague, Senator Pinder, spoke about, again, Charlotte Street, and I think my minister in his contribution said, listen, it is time now to pedestrianize some areas, Bay Street. And I can assure you that we shall walk the areas, and under this administration, people will see change happening. There's progress. We also heard some concerns as it relates to parking on Bay Street. And I want to say also that we have had a plan that's going to be in front, subject to my minister's approval, for a parking solution. We know that there are no parking areas, so we're looking at studies that were done as it relates to parking downtown. We're speaking with companies as it relates to valet parking for patrons. And so we're going to do what it takes to find a solution for win-win. I also spoke, Madam President, to some shop owners right here on Parliament Street. And their complaint was every time the House is in session or the Senate is in session, there is nowhere for their patrons to park. And so they've asked for consideration as to where they can park. And I can let them know that, listen, this is something that we're actively looking at, and we will find a solution. We are far from done, but we are certainly in motion working for you. I wish for everyone. As I conclude, Madam President, I am thankful for the opportunity afforded me again by our Prime Minister and my Minister the Honorable I. Chester Cooper, and I look forward to the change and the things that will happen under this Davis administration. Thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very good, my friend. Superb.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Randy Roll, for an excellent contribution. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st of July 2023 and ending 30th of June 2024. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis. Close the door. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, before I commence, I'd like to join with Senator Halkitis in congratulating all those persons who have graduated this graduation season. I myself have a graduation household as well as Senator Seymour. And I'd also like to actually extend it to the friends and families and teachers who have helped all of those students to graduate, because it is a team effort. It does take a village, and they have finished a stage in their life, and as they go on to the next. I'd also like to take a few moments to give tribute to the late Honorable George Andrew Smith. I've known Mr. Smith for almost my entire life. To me, he was most importantly Gigi and Andrew's daddy. He literally introduced us to Exuma. In the early 90s, my parents began to introduce my sister Viola and I to the family islands. Mr. Smith heard that we were traveling to Exuma via charter and asked if we had space for him to join us. He instructed the pilot to fly as low as he could so that he could point out and name each and every key as we approached Great Exuma. I wish I could say that I remembered a lot about the trip, but what I do remember was the way it felt to travel around Exuma in the company of a beloved member of Parliament. Over the last 12 years, I began to see Mr. Smith regularly when I joined St. Paul the Apostle Parish with my active toddler. Every Sunday at 11 a.m., and particularly before the pandemic, Mr. Smith always had a wink, a smile, a fist bump, or a high five for Camellia. He connected with her in that most natural way that he connects with everyone. He was a Sunday fixture. His stories were entertaining and with that occasional mischievous twinkle. Gina, Gigi, Andrew, I thank you for sharing your father with us. And I thank you for allowing us to give public tribute to him while you navigated your own personal grief. May his soul rest in peace and rise in glory. And now to the matter at hand. Madam President, for the last 20 months, this New Day administration has sought to remind us about how the COVID-19 lockdowns impacted us socially and financially. Madam President, hindsight is an amazing thing, especially when it has been twisted and manipulated. I really hope that this is the last budget cycle that we hear this irresponsible propaganda. The world went into lockdown. The United Kingdom, Europe, the United States, Canada, leaders from around the world, acting on expert advice, made the decision to lock down their cities based on the view that it was in the best interest of their citizens. So much so that when the staff at number 10 Downing Street, the office of the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, broke the lockdown restrictions, it started a chain of reaction of events that has resulted in multiple resignations, a criminal investigation, a parliamentary investigation, and possibly parliamentary sanctions, which were narrowly avoided with the latest resignation of Boris Johnson. I imagine that it was not an easy decision to lock down this country, and I'm almost positive that it was not a decision that was taken lightly. But this administration wants to constantly, repeatedly, serially use lockdowns as an example of bad leadership. Yes, lockdowns adversely affected people worldwide. Economies suffered, and persons whose businesses and occupations are reliant on social contact, like the hospitality industry and the tourism industry, they felt it worse. We were all frustrated until we adapted. Businesses adapted and evolved. Government policies adapted and evolved. Lockdowns also created a technological wave, particularly here in the Bahamas. Apps like Craven and its many Craven-inspired competitors delivered our food. Businesses developed websites to allow for online shopping. But I'm still waiting to do my grocery shopping from a major food store chain online and have my food delivered, just like I did as a student in London over 15 years ago. Our online banking apps have evolved to rival those of US-based banks. The government's online services have evolved. I renewed my passport online. No connections, no favors, just me and the passport office website. But this administration would like you to focus on the negative. They do not want you to focus on the Bahamians that received unemployment benefits. They do not want you to focus on how unemployment benefits were expanded to those who were self-employed in the tourism industry. They do not want you to focus on the online platform launched by the Ministry of Education. Many schools continue to use online platforms to supplement in-person teaching. I recently had an occasion to talk to my daughter about a friend who was always negative, always looking for the worst in others. I told her that those kinds of people are toxic and that they point out the negative in others to distract you from noticing their own shortcomings. Madam President, this administration does not want the Bahamian public to notice that they, in my opinion, do not have our best interests at heart. They spend recklessly and lead aimlessly. I've spoken often in this place about good governance and the elements that make up good governance. Good governance is not a new term or concept. It pushes for a modernized approach to governance with transparency, accountability, and consultation as its key components. Bahamians and those who take up residence in our sunny clime are critical thinkers, even more so now than we were before. That's how we've been raised. And that's how we've raised our sons and daughters and nieces and nephews to be. We have taught them to think for themselves and ask questions. We implored them not just to take someone's word because they're in the position of authority, but to use their God-given brains to think for themselves and decide if something makes sense. But this administration seems to believe that this is a group of voters that will believe whatever story they spin, hook, line, and sinker. Or they can tell us or not tell us anything, and we will smile and go along with it. We have never been that kind of people. The mace got thrown out of Parliament because we wouldn't tolerate oppression. The general strike and the Burma Road riots happened because we wouldn't tolerate repression. As we count down to 50 and recount every PLP action that led to independence, why does this administration think that they can mislead the Bahamian people and deny us information? They think that if they razzle-dazzle us with confetti guns and beautifully decorated tea parties, that we will forget that they haven't disclosed the budget for the 50th anniversary celebrations, or that they have not told us whether the Procurement Review Tribunal has been established, or whether the 10 million loan for the Ministry of Housing complied with the Debt Management Act, or whether the contract or contracts to build the Pinecrest subdivision were put out to bid, or the amount of taxi plates issued since the 19th of September 2021, or the amounts of the financial settlements to the Financial Secretary, the Commissioner of Police, and other senior officers. I went to the tea party. The room was beautiful. The cookies were minuscule, but I still want to know how much that cost us and how many taxi plates were issued. We have forecasted increased revenue of $249,240,090. But instead of using the increased revenue to pay down the debt, like most of us responsible people, when we get a little more money than expected, we try to put a little something on the principal. This administration has increased its expenditures. The Office of the Prime Minister's Delivery Unit is forecasted to have an increased expenditure of $1 million. Similarly, the Office of the Prime Minister's Advertising and Marketing budget is also getting an increase of $1 million, which is particularly amusing because they haven't delivered. And what are they marketing? Certainly not the new laws that are coming into force on Saturday. At least 19 of the budget heads have indicated an increase in contract worker salaries of over $500,000. Either this means fat contracts for a selected few, or that the government is hiring an army of contract workers. Providing legitimate employment is always a good thing, but the answer is not government contract workers. These persons often have very little job security, and they are unable to get loans as a result of their temporary status. And when they are lucky enough to receive successive contracts, they still don't have the pension benefits available to civil servants that are permanent and pensionable. This is a short-term solution to a long-term issue of job creation. But maybe it's just enough to bring the employment rate down to give the impression that all is well.
That's better than building sidewalks.
A better indicator of the health of our economy would be how many jobs have been created by the private sector, whilst this government has increased downward pressures on employers and business. A little later in this contribution, I'm going to quote the Financial Secretary and his comments, which give you a window into this government's unrelenting mission to overtax our citizens and businesses. Last year, we looked at the government's forecast revenue for 2022-2023 financial year and its mid-year strategy report. The math, it wasn't mathing. The government forecasted significant increases in revenue, but was adamant about there being no new taxes and no new burdens on the Bahamian people. Upon examination of the provisional VAT revenue received between July 2022 and March 2023, it is clear that if VAT revenue continues at that pace for the remainder of the financial year, which ends Friday, the government would fall short of their forecasted revenue for 2022-2023. Yet, their eyes got even bigger, and they have forecasted even higher revenue in the upcoming financial year. If they aren't likely to meet last year's goal, but they still want more than they wanted last year, there's optimistic, and then there's reckless. It's reckless because budgets ought to be based on fact and reality. The government expenditure ought to be determined by government revenue. If I'm getting $10 in taxes and a $20 loan, I have a total of $30 to spend. But if you're only getting $8 in taxes with your $20 loan, you only have $28 to spend. If you spend $30, you'll have to get another loan for the remaining $2. And if you only spend $28, then you have to decide whether or not you're going to buy the hair clips. Therefore, if government revenue is overestimated, then government ministries and departments are planning to spend more money than is likely to be received, which means that we'll have to borrow more money that is forecasted to meet the difference and meet expenditure demands, which at the end of the day increases our debt and is more detrimental to the Bahamian economy. Or they simply do not do the projects, programs, and promised increases that they have touted, continuing their pattern of overselling and underdelivering. It is because of actions like this that I believe that this administration leads aimlessly. This budget has been advertised as a budget for security and progress. But you cannot have a sense of security without transparency and certainty. As we look towards our next 50 years, we require a government that does not dictate to us the terms of our future, but engages the public in what is better known as consultation. The issue of and requirement to consult and the importance of consultation ought to be well known to the government. Former President of the Court of Appeal, Dame Anita Allen, in the Responsible Development of Abaco case in 2011, said, "Consultation is a vital ingredient of transparency in good governance. It's right that public authorities inform and consult those who are affected by their decisions." She went further to an English case, which Lord Wolfe said, and I'm going to paraphrase, "Proper consultation must be undertaken at a time when proposals are still in the formative stage and must include sufficient reasons for particular proposals to allow those consulted to give intelligent consideration and intelligent response. Adequate time must be given for the purpose, and the product of consultation ought to be taken into account when the ultimate decision is taken." Madam President, there have been ample examples during this budget exercise that have demonstrated that there has been very little, if any, consultation regarding the proposed changes in this budget, which have left those impacted feeling vulnerable and uncertain. We have been ambushed. This has been a budget by ambush. After saying that they will not implement the sugar tax, they proceeded with the legislation and said that they will consult after, not consult at the formative stage, but after they've already made the decision to do so. 2 weeks ago, social media was in a flurry about the proposed changes to the Road Traffic Act. A draft bill in circulation made persons believe that they needed permission from the controller of road traffic to let someone else drive their car. The government subsequently issued a statement to explain the amendment. But the simple question, Madam President, is why weren't those proposed changes foreshadowed and explained prior to the tabling of the legislation? The proposed changes had to be approved by Cabinet and drafted by the Law Reform Commission. It was not a decision that was made overnight, but yet Bahamian road users were caught off guard and left to interpret matters by themselves, and now, probably most importantly, they only had 4 weeks to apply for the necessary permissions so that they would not be breaking the law on the 1st of July. Why can't we receive timely information about the matters that impact our day-to-day lives? Another example is the sweeping changes to the business license regime and VAT reporting. Again, this isn't a decision that was made overnight, but there was no advance notice, and if there was, it was limited. The entire Business License Act is being repealed and replaced, and there has been one half-day seminar 8 days before the law is scheduled to be enacted to discuss the changes to the business license regime. Another version of this administration believed in Bahamians, but this administration does not appear to share the same compassion. I have two views. Either they think that they are so much smarter than the rest of us that there's no need to consult or engage us mere mortals, or there's really no plan, and therefore there can be no prior considerations. Look at the handling of the need to increase national insurance contribution rate. Minister LaRota, to his credit, has foreshadowed repeatedly the need to raise the contribution rate for the survival of our Social Security Fund. But we could not get any guidance from Cabinet. No information on when or how high the increase would be, or whether it would be employer or an employee contribution increase. And then, after the Prime Minister's budget contribution, there was a press release regarding the increase of the NIB contribution rate. Again, I have two views. It was deliberately not included in the Prime Minister's contribution because all eyes were on the Prime Minister and it was only meant to be a good news contribution, or they only released the information because of the external pressure being applied. The Prime Minister continues to discuss the impact of climate change around the world. But here at home, there have been no significant new examples of sustainable development. I spent 4 long and hot days at the Betty Kelly Kenning Pool for the Swimming National Championships. As we complained about the heat and the humidity, a young person pointedly asked, "What are we doing to secure their future? What steps are we taking to reduce our carbon footprint?" He observed that the roof of the swimming complex was perfect for solar panels, but that there were none. We are a small nation, but a big change can be made by making a series of small changes. Offering carbon credits is only possible if we do not need the carbon credits ourselves to offset our energy use. I asked during the budget debate last year, and I ask again, where are the reliable sources of affordable, sustainable energy? Where are the efforts to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels? Where are the opportunities and incentives for entrepreneurs in renewable energy or otherwise? And how can we access the 100% financing for renewable energy systems? They promised to deliver all of these things in that glossy blueprint for change. But my personal favorite remains that the promise that within the first 100 days, they would cause a review of BPL operations to reduce the cost of electricity, maintain a reliable supply, and enter into contractual arrangements which would put BPL on solid financial footing, and most importantly, reduce the cost of living and doing business in the Bahamas. Madam President, you remember what I said about overselling and under-delivering? Hundreds of thousands of Bahamian residents are relying on this administration to lead with purpose. They had the audacity to use the phrase, "it's a matter of trust," on Tuesday night in the House of Assembly. But in the last 20 months, they have secretly advanced monies from the Treasury to fund a party junket to Bermuda. They have misspoke about matters of national importance, the deficit, and the amount of money being made available to us by the UK Development Bank. They have not complied with the Public Debt Management Act or the Procurement Act or the Financial Responsibility Act. They've caused our electricity bills to increase and then pretended that they knew nothing about it. I just gave a list of promises from the Blueprint for Change that remained unfilled. And yet they think that the 34% of voters who bought the hype in September 2021 trust them. The issues that matter most to Bahamians and residents are not being addressed by this administration. They have given us no new initiatives on immigration and crime. New trucks and BMW bicycles will not solve the problem. The cost of electricity will not stay put. At this point, the electricity isn't even staying on anymore. Bahamian voters believe that it would be a new day, free from the usual scandals and missteps, and that the Davis-Cooper administration would really actually deliver progressive leadership. Sadly, that has not been the case, at least not for Bahamians. But the cruise lines appear to have benefited from a Davis-Cooper administration that takes their concerns into consideration and responds to meet their needs. We have all seen the media reports on this administration's delay of the implementation of the sea departure tax. The story was even on Loop News, which is a Caribbean news outlet. It was reported that the government will delay the implementation of the new sea passenger tax increases to the 1st of January 2024, after the cruise lines lobbied the government to delay the implementation of passenger tax after the government had already tabled legislation to implement the changes on the 1st of July with the new budget year. But there are two important questions. First of all, why didn't this government discuss the increase prior to tabling the legislation so that cruise lines could have raised their concerns while the proposal was still in its formative stages? Secondly, and probably most importantly, why was the government so receptive to the lobby of the cruise lines when it has not been so receptive to the lobby of Bahamian businesses like gas retailers and the Chamber of Commerce? The financial secretary, in his response to the Chamber's complaint about the reduced time for remitting VAT for large businesses, said, "We are looking to increase our revenue target by about $400 million next year. Every little bit counts. It improves cash flow and reduces interest expense." But Bahamian businesses are simply asking for additional time to remit VAT to the government, not to change the amount that's being remitted. And if every little bit counts, why did the government just decide to forfeit 6 months of increased passenger tax for persons leaving the Bahamas by sea? The next natural question is, how does this agreed reduction in revenue impact this administration's plans? What products or plans are being cut or getting delayed? If they exercise good governance, if they consulted with the cruise lines prior to drafting the legislation, they would have heard their concerns earlier and adjusted accordingly. If they consulted with the local business community, the local business community could have expressed their concerns and could have taken steps to adjust their internal accounting procedures accordingly. If they had engaged Bahamian people on the ongoing issues regarding the national insurance contribution rate and the sustainability of the fund, we would have had the information we needed to understand the increases and the need for continuing contribution increases. Information is power. If they had engaged the public regarding the proposed changes to Road Traffic Act, the impacted road users could have taken steps to license and register their vehicles so that they are in compliance with the law on day one of the new financial year. We cannot ignore the law with no consequence like they do.
Madam President, I thank the Senator for yielding. Madam President, it is the 1 o'clock hour, and I would like to move that the Senate do, so that the Senator might complete her contribution, I would like to move that the Senate do sit beyond 1 p.m. this afternoon.
Sir, it has been moved and seconded that the Senate sit beyond the 1 p.m. hour. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The Senate will sit beyond the 1 p.m. hour. Senator Michael Bonin Ellis, thank you for yielding, and please continue with your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. But they do not, this PLP administration does not engage. They do not consult. They lead aimlessly, and that is the opposite of progressive. The member of Southern Shores in the lower house said that as a pastor, he can say in conclusion 3 times. And since I'm only a lawyer, I think I can say it twice. He said he could only sum up 3 times. So as a lawyer, I'm going to sum up twice. As I conclude, I want to address the tabled Protection Against Violence bill. For almost 10 years, we have had a draft gender-based violence bill that was drafted by the foremost stakeholders to international standards. The draft gender-based violence bill was extensively circulated for consultation and was exhaustively discussed and revised. After nearly 10 years, in response to the escalation in violence against women and children, almost all stakeholders have clamored with a united voice for the passage of the gender-based violence bill. The government had and continues to have a clear mandate on the passage of that bill. Yet, for reasons unexplained, this administration has shelved the gender-based violence bill and tabled a new bill to address the issue of domestic violence. It is apparent just by the size alone of the new bill versus the former gender-based violence bill that the new bill is less comprehensive than its predecessor. It's 42 sections long as opposed to 55 sections. It's 24 pages long as opposed to the 68-page gender-based violence bill. What have they removed from the former vetted and approved bill, and why has it been taken out? The preamble to the new bill states that amongst its purposes is to enable the Bahamas to fulfill certain obligations arising under regional and international treaties and for matters connected therewith. It is of note that the 13th Commonwealth Women's Affairs Ministerial Meeting will be taking place in Nassau in the week beginning the 21st of August 2023. And among the stated objectives of that meeting is making further progress towards the elimination of gender-based violence. Is the government just checking boxes of our treaty obligations? And if that is the case, then they ought to table the amendments to the Sexual Offenses Act as well. That said, one can only hope that this administration's actions were not more motivated by those words in the preamble to the new bill and the impending Women's Affairs Ministerial Meeting than they are by the plight of those among us that need the protections and empowerment of the NGOs that provide services to assist victims of violence that are set out in the gender-based violence bill. By its actions, the government proposes to waste nearly 10 years of effort and advocacy to begin a consultation process anew at a time that we are currently facing a crisis of escalating violence against women and children. During his budget contribution, the Minister of National Security acknowledged a 64% increase in rapes in the capital. In January, the Commissioner of Police acknowledged a 15% increase in rapes nationwide. In the face of these statistics, and given the acceptance of and demands for the passage of the gender-based violence bill, the introduction of a new bill at this time does not appear to be a prudent course of action. Madam President, through you, I am asking the executive to engage stakeholders and explain why they have walked away from the existing draft legislation, and explain the thoughts behind this draft so that stakeholders can have the opportunity to intelligently consider and intelligently respond to the bill. It would seem that the most expeditious course would be the passing of the existing gender-based violence bill. This would allow the government to check the necessary treaty obligation boxes, and it would deliver what the NGOs and other stakeholders have been clamoring for without further delay, which would result from a new round of consultations. Therefore, Madam President, I am asking the executive not to discard almost 10 years of work. Be humble enough to recognize that they do not have the monopoly on intelligence and wanting the best for the Bahamian people, especially the most vulnerable. I'm asking that they table and pass the existing gender-based violence bill. And finally, in conclusion, I want to thank the Leader of the Opposition, the Member of Parliament for Marco City, for his continued confidence in me. I do not take his confidence lightly, And I hope that each time I rise in this place, I meet and hopefully exceed his expectations. Marco City has a work ethic that requires endurance and discipline by those around him. Working hard with Pintard is more than just a cute rhyme. I take seriously my responsibility to make laws for the good, peace, and government of the Bahamas. We are all looking forward to the next 50 years being even better than the first. But we cannot truly develop a mature democracy until we embrace and action the principles of good governance. Our electorate requires it. Our future requires it. And if this administration does not embrace it, they will be left behind. The change is unstoppable. May the God that offers us strength and refuge continue to bless our land of perpetual sunshine.
Thank you, Senator Michael Abana and Alice, for your contribution to the budget debate. As many,
Just on a point of order, I wanted to
the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you. I wanted to allow the good senator to have an uninterrupted time to give her communication, especially given that she was the lead for the opposition. But there are a couple of items that were raised, Madam President, that misled the Bahamian public. The first one was the good senator's discussion on matters of consultation. I might remind the Bahamian people that it was the former administration who, without notice, raised the VAT 67% by the mere tabling of a piece of legislation rather than discussing it with anybody. But let me finish. So I remind the Bahamian people of that. Now, on the issue of our consultation, Madam President, the Chamber of Commerce was consulted by the Ministry of Finance, at the Ministry of Finance on the budget. In fact, I witnessed and paid respects to my dear friend, the President of the Chamber, when she was in the lobby heading to see the Financial Secretary and Minister Halkitis on the budget. We had a comprehensive consultation with the financial services industry that was mentioned, and have had numerous feedback, and we even issued a report to them on the business license and how it affects their industry. And thirdly, Madam President, with respect to further consultation, the Prime Minister, prior to anything being tabled in the House of Assembly, had a meeting, as he does every single year, with prominent business owners in the community, which is entitled the Small Business Consultation Forum. This happened prior to the legislation even being tabled in the House of Assembly. So to take the position there was no consultation is just flat out wrong. Now let me finish the consultation point, and I'll let the senator respond. The last part of the consultation discussion that the senator had to do with the cruise lines. I can speak firsthand with this because I was sitting with the Prime Minister and had a conference call with the President of the Cruise Association prior to the budget legislation being tabled in the House of Assembly, advising them that we were making an adjustment to the departure tax. They advised they wanted listen to this now, a 3-year phase-in on the departure tax. No, but we did consult.
Yes.
No, they were given their, and just let me finish. We told them that was unacceptable, and we'd give a 6-month transition. The legislation had the wrong date. It should have had January and not July. And frankly, I take responsibility as the operative minister for drafting legislation. The Deputy Prime Minister made this point, that it was the wrong date. And again, I take the responsibility for that, right? I take the responsibility for that as the Attorney General. But to go on and say that what the Deputy Prime Minister has already clarified is not so, without even referencing to his clarification, is frankly misleading, Madam President. I'll let her address that.
I think you're listening to when she spoke.
The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, with relation to consultation, I did not say that there was no consultation. I said that it was limited. And as to the second point regarding the Deputy Prime Minister, he is the person that was referred to in the Loop News article, which I referred to. So I did refer to his comments.
Thank you, Senator Michael Bonnet Ellis.
Okay, I'll
Chair
leave.
recognizes Senator
Thank
the
you.
Honorable
I'll leave that
Michael
there. One other point of order I have on misleading the Bahamian public, and it has to do with the discussion on climate change. The good senator, my friend, misled the Bahamian public in that she said that she sees no evidence of policy decisions regarding the climate crisis and climate mitigation in the Bahamas. That is flat out wrong. In fact, Madam President, we passed the Carbon Initiatives Bill. And what that bill that the good senator voted for has in it requirements for emissions registries and emissions tracking. So we can do just as the good senator referred to, understand our emissions in the country so we can have the proper metrics in order to be able to know the carbon credits that are going to benefit the country. In fact, if the good senator would read the budget, she would see there's a line item in the Office of the Prime Minister head specifically to establish the emissions registry in order to fulfill our obligations and deal with issues of climate change in the country. With respect to renewable energy, I would just invite the senator to stay tuned. You will see a number of expressions of interest released in the rather short term.
Well beyond.
That would address matters of renewable energy and solicitation widely of renewable energy in Nassau, as well as inputting in the Family Islands. So that will come and is coming this summer in a very short term. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator. Thank you, Senator Ryan Pinder. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to correct. I'm not sure whether, I know that the good Attorney General was having a conversation at the end of the table whilst I was speaking, so I don't think he properly heard what I said. But it was actually the last comment about staying tuned to sustainable development that actually was a correct reflection of what I said. I made no comments about carbon credit policy or whatever he referred to in the beginning. It was only the last part of what he said that actually referred to something that I said in my contribution. So he is misleading the Bahamian people in terms of what I said.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis.
Madam President, I move that the business of the Senate be suspended until 2:30 p.m. this afternoon.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of the Senate is suspended until 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. As many hours in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The business of the Senate is suspended until 2:30 p.m. this afternoon.